Hello and welcome to the Fabric Spotlight, a series of talks on everything cloud, infrastructure, and enterprise. Our guests and enterprise are enterprise CXOs and infrastructure executives. And today, I'm really delighted to welcome a good friend of mine and CEO of Nutanix, Rajiv Ramaswamy. Welcome, Rajiv.
Thank you, Rajan. Glad to be here.
Yeah, great to see you, Rajiv, and thanks for taking the time. So I've seen your career progress quite dramatically and make interesting transitions from Cisco to Broadcom to the GM position and CEO at VMware and now CEO of Nutanix. You have made quite a rapid progress in your career and also made some immense contributions along the way to these various organizations. Could you share a bit of your background, how you came to be the CEO of Nutanix and your experiences along the way?
Sure. One of the things for me that I've enjoyed is always learning on every job that I've been at and learning something new. So if you look at that list of companies, for the most part, I've been in systems and software companies. I did have a detour to be in a chip company that was Broadcom, and then moved into pure software. And with every one of those, it's been somewhat opportunistic in terms of how those opportunities have arrived. But it's also been a progression of, okay, you're in a job, you want to get something done of significance in every role. And then after a few years, you look for, okay, what's next and what's the right next thing that's going to challenge you, where you can bring skills to the table that actually help. So the way I look for whatever my next thing is, it's like, okay, you got to have a zone of competency where you can be effective in what you do in this new role. But at the same time, it has to be challenging enough that you're going to learn something out of it and you're going to be doing something different from what you did before. And that's always been my guiding principle in terms of every one of these roles. And I've been fortunate enough to have a number of these just show up sometimes opportunistically. The last one, this particular Nutanix one also showed up that way. I mean, it so happened that it was a company that I knew well from the outside. I actually competed with Nutanix from VMware. And I knew several people at Nutanix. And when Dheeraj decided to step down as the founder CEO, there were a few people in the Nutanix team, including some old advisors and so forth, who reached out to me. And that's sort of how this happened.
Great. I mean, there is something that you mentioned along the way as you're describing your background is the challenges that you face and the interesting contributions in these companies that you could make. So as you look at Nutanix, how different are the business dynamics or the experience so far as you have been the CEO, where this has been a new role for you?
Yeah, look, I mean, first of all, Nutanix is, I would say, in a second innings as a company, right? The first innings was about building and pioneering hyperconverged, taking that to market, going public, starting from a startup. And now it is in the second innings, it is about scaling the company, driving growth and profitability, and also figuring out a path to the future. What the first 10 years, got us through the first 10 years is not necessarily what's going to get us through the next 10 years. And that's really that was primarily the rationale for bringing in a new CEO anyway at the company. Now, the company, of course, Nutanix is smaller than some of the other companies that I've worked at. And as a result, you have to be even more focused in terms of what you can do and what you should not do. And I think that's part of, some of the learnings here is to really figure out the set of areas that we are going to focus on and do really well. Others where we are going to rely on partners and building an ecosystem of partners to make sure that we are able to deliver a complete solution to what our customers need to solve their business problems. So I think, learning to be much more focused. And of course, we have to be nimble. We have to execute really well and carve a differentiated path and role for ourselves in a world where we have a number of large players that we compete with.
So in our walks and sometimes in our talks informally, you have been emphasizing the fact that Nutanix is a software company, is a cloud company. So what are the key areas of focus in this cloud infrastructure space that you think Nutanix excels in?
Yeah, so we are, we started out in our first phase of our journey, breaking down silos across compute, storage, and network within data centers. Instead of having each of these be run by separate teams, separate equipment, a separate piece of software, all managed separately, we created Hyperconverged. And Hyperconverged was really bringing all of these together. into a simple solution that could be managed very easily, and at the same time drive significant returns on investments and total cost of ownership reductions. So that was the first innings, and I look at this as saying we broke up silos within these data centers. Now, if you look at where the world is moving to cloud, and clouds in some ways are the new silos. Every cloud is different. They've got a unique set of services, a unique set of tools, and IT teams need to be trained to make use of each of these clouds separately. And so there's a lot of opportunity for our customers to go to the cloud, but at the same time, there's also a lot of challenges and operational complexity. So we think we can take the same DNA and the simplicity that we brought to data centers and apply them to the cloud to bust these silos across clouds. And so our vision really is, for the first 10 years, our vision was to make data centers and computing invisible. Now it's about making clouds invisible. And invisible is a very powerful word. And what we mean by that is to hide the underlying complexities and really enable our customers to focus on running their businesses rather than figuring out how to manage and operate across every one of these clouds. And so how are we doing that? We're doing that by providing a software platform. To your point, in terms of cloud infrastructure, we have a cloud software platform. We call it the Nutanix Cloud Platform that consists of cloud infrastructure, which is all the components needed to bring and build a cloud. That would be, the compute, storage, networking software needed, all software, distributed systems. And then the next piece is cloud management, which is everything that's needed to manage and operate a cloud, right? Operations, monitoring, automation, all of those costing, et cetera, right? Governance, all of those fall into that bucket. And then a separate set of unique services, very focused set of services that we offer. One would be around unified storage, being able to do files, objects, handle all forms of storage. The other, very specifically for us, is around database automation and database as a service. And that's a huge opportunity for us, relatively untapped in a multi-cloud world. And then the last piece is our traditional focus on end-user computing. So that's really our platform. And with this platform, again, I think we are able to allow our customers to operate across wherever they want to operate across, in their own data centers, in a private cloud setting, in the edge, moving toward the edge, or in the public cloud of their choice.
So would you describe this, and correct me if I'm wrong, as a hybrid multi-cloud strategy, and that it plays into the strength that you bring to the table?
Yes, indeed. That's exactly what we call it. We call it hybrid multi-cloud. And if you look at the strengths, again, it's built on our foundation, right? We started out with doing this inside of private clouds and inside of data centers, and we're extending that now across multiple clouds. And if you talk to customers increasingly, there's been a number of surveys that have indicated that, first of all, applications are going to run everywhere. Right? They're not going to be just in one public cloud or the other. They're going to run all over the place. And most customers that you poll will say they're living in this hybrid environment. They're going to be running on more than one public cloud, and very likely will also have their own data centers. Right? So it's that world that our customers are operating in, and that's the world that we want to enable and simplify.
Well, a lot of questions then come along the way as a part of the strategy. The first element of that would be, let's just talk about security a little bit. You talked about end-user computing, you talked about database, and you talked about the storage elements of it. The security elements are different across each of these. So what do you have? What kind of a security strategy do you have? I'm sure you have a security strategy. And where do you do it in-house, and where do you partner?
Yeah, I think we try to build in whatever we can into the platform and where we can add value ourselves. And then for the others, we look to partner. So as an example, today, built into our cloud platform is micro-segmentation. And it's exactly the same security that's available wherever you're running, in the private cloud or in the public cloud of choice, right? And that's a fundamental tenet, right? We want to do everything the same way, regardless of where the apps run. And so micro-segmentation is something that naturally sits in the layer. It sits inside of your cloud infrastructure layer, and we do that. Since we're looking at files and objects, we're also able to look at a lot of the data that we manage and add security functions where we can. For example, encrypting data, For example, ransomware protection, because we're actually able to look at the files and look at what's changed over time. And building ransomware protection is another area. Now, at the same time, there's many areas in security that we don't do. A full-fledged security player. So, for example, we partner with the likes of Palo Alto Networks that has a broad security platform. We partner with endpoint security providers where we don't quite do that ourselves, right? And then, of course, finally, the last piece is security analytics and SIM, right? Players where we will export data to those players. So security is a very vast problem. And our customers, for us, we are focused on securing the elements of data that we manage, providing a built-in security that we can provide within the cloud infrastructure platform that we build, and partnering for the rest.
Along with security, an associated area is observability, performance optimization.
Yes.
How is Nutanix approach AI different or similar to the others?
Yeah, I think it again depends on the layers of the stack that you're looking at. So for the infrastructure layer, we have our own tooling, right? We provide our own observability, and we have a platform called Prism. That is the operations platform. It's the operations monitoring observability platform for the infrastructure layer. Now, as you start moving up the stack, again, if you look at containers and observability for a cloud-native application, so that today we're partnering. For example, we've announced partnerships with the likes of Red Hat, a very recent partnership announcement where we run the full OpenShift suite on top of a Nutanix platform, and OpenShift has its own built-in observability, for example. We also partner with folks like Azure Arc, right? So Azure Arc can manage Kubernetes clusters running on a Nutanix platform. And so our approach on cloud native is largely, we can do runtime Kubernetes, but in terms of looking at the observability, manageability, all of those above that layer, and the development tools, tool chain, for example, and the CI/CD pipeline, we partner with others.
So you are somewhat familiar with what the fabric companies do. And I presume that given your mention on observability and also end user security in other areas, some of these could be potential partnerships that is possible. But I want to get it from you as to what areas do you think where you would see collaborating with startups and obviously in somewhat of a self-interested ways, what areas that fabric companies can collaborate with Nutanix?
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, there's so many, it's a rich opportunity set here in front of us. So cloud native, in general, cloud native is a growing area. In general, security continues to be a growing area and a constantly changing landscape for sure. First, I mean, if you look at the way we approach these things, we have a partner ecosystem, first of all. So the first opportunity for startups, of course, is, they can be a partner for us. So we have a number of, for example, partnerships when it comes to backup providers running on top of our infrastructure, as an example. So we're perfectly fine working with providers, other providers who are complementary to us, and partnering in that form, right? So we will enable, for example, joint solutions, interoperability testing, and make sure that, when we provide a platform, others can actually build on top of that platform and be able to add value in terms of what they bring. So that's one. I mean, we, of course, in the past have also done some acquisitions, and we will continue to do some acquisitions of areas that are complementary to us and areas that we feel are relatively adjacent to what we do and can fit into our platform. So right now, I think, we are much more focused in terms of actually we've been bringing our portfolio together to build this cloud platform. And so we would look for right now probably extensions to this in terms of added on pieces. But I will just say that big acquisitions are not a focus for us at this point. We are very focused in terms of actually building this platform and really building more partners around that platform. So I think to the extent that, the fabric startups can complement what we do, the door is wide open to being able to work with you folks.
So in terms of partnering or acquisition, it doesn't not quite the matter, but what are the key going forward initiatives that you're comfortable in sharing in terms of where Nutanix is heading towards and where you see complementary activities?
Yeah, I think we've been very clear in terms of articulating what we are doing right? And that is building that hybrid multi-cloud platform at the infrastructure layer, right? We will be delivering an IaaS platform with a very selective set of services above that, okay? So we will not be doing a full cloud native stack, for example. That's partnering. We will be doing, files, objects, all forms of storage. Database automation, database as a service. That, by the way, we are not a database provider, to be clear, but we provide the tooling around those. So we welcome, for example, working with open source database companies in terms of curating those and enabling those to be delivered in a multi-cloud environment at scale, for example. So that's security is obviously a key extension area for us that we can partner. We're not doing, we're doing whatever we are building in, but the rest we're open to partnering. So we don't do, our networking is very much basic, right? Inside what we do, L2 overlays. We do, of course, also microsegmentation, but we're not a full-fledged networking provider either. Okay. And then, of course, I think over time, as we do more looking at edge computing, I think there'll be opportunities there, because edge compute, I think, is also going to be very much, verticals focused. If you're talking to manufacturing, you'll probably have a set of manufacturing specific use cases as an example. And so we would welcome, for example, partnering with people who are doing work in those areas that are very specific and complementary, like to what we do, right? For us, we will just provide the edge compute as a platform at an infrastructure layer, and again, provide a platform where local applications can be run and managed remotely. But the app itself, and also the management of all the end devices, if there are IoT devices connected to those are not things that we do ourselves.
Fantastic. You almost read my mind and preempted my next question, which was all about edge and where Nutanix's position is with respect to the edge cloud. But related to that edge and related to the fact that the world has dramatically changed in the last couple of years, and the new normal is remote working. What is Nutanix doing in the area of enabling remote workers?
I mean, traditionally, by the way, virtual desktops and enabling end user computing, that's always been a strong area of focus for us, and that's actually got us going. And in fact, we've seen a recent burst in activity, right, stimulated by remote work for virtual desktops. Virtual desktops can be hosted anywhere. They can be hosted in data centers. They can be cloud delivered. And we provide a platform where these desktops can be hosted and delivered off, and we do that really well. Now that, again, over time can be complemented with last mile mechanisms, right? So in terms of how do you actually deliver that across a network to users? And those are things that we don't do ourselves, right? We have the virtual desktop platform. That's what we provide. The protocol itself is done by people like Citrix and others outside. And of course, we have our own version of it that we deliver as a cloud service called Frame, which is desktops as a service. But again, largely everything aside from that is complementary, and it's open to partnerships.
Wonderful. You have had a fair exposure to startups from your various vantage points, be it at Cisco, Broadcom, VMware, and now at Nutanix. What would you provide as an advice to entrepreneurs in the infrastructure space or in other spaces in general? And how would you advise them as, let's say, they want approach to partner with Nutanix? What would be your advice to them?
Well, look, I mean, this might seem super basic. The first thing you have to figure out is your value proposition and product market fit. And that might take some iterations to get it right. And you have to get that right. You have to clearly establish that to become a viable company. So once you've established that, and if you are looking to partner, usually it's not particularly interesting if, let's say, somebody comes to us and just says they want to run on our platform and they just want us to sell them or resell them. I would also urge the folks who are coming to us or any other large partner to think about what's in it for the other side. So how is the other side going to benefit, right? So any of these things is going to be simply, both sides have to benefit and see value. And so think about it if you're a startup. I mean, are you bringing technology that can complement what somebody else needs that can complete the solution? Because people are unwilling to invest in anything from a go-to-market perspective with small companies unless it's super compelling, right? So for us, we'd be happy to go do a reference architecture or a solution definition, right, with a startup. Now, if you want to go beyond that and start looking at any kind of go-to-market activities, then we'd have to understand what's in it for us. And I would urge startup founders and CEOs to think through that as they come talk to folks like us or any other large provider. So maybe it's just stating the obvious, but I find that to be missing sometimes.
That's excellent. And as we conclude our talk, any other parting advice, especially given the Fabric's bias towards young entrepreneurs, any other parting advice to young entrepreneurs, any areas that you see that are super interesting that entrepreneurs should focus on?
I mean, look, the entire enterprise software space is still wide open, lots of opportunities for companies to create value. And you've seen that, right? I mean, you see, if you look at the value creation that's happened here over the last several years in this area, it's just been tremendous. And it continues to be tremendous going forward as well. So I would just say, again, to reiterate what I said, make sure you're targeting an area where there is clearly significant value creation in terms of you're solving a problem or you're enabling an opportunity that hasn't been thought about before and is going to create tremendous value to your customer. Think about always the so what, right? You're doing something, so what? What's it going to create and what's it going to benefit the target that you're seeking to sell to? So I would, again, very much focus on that. And of course, look, it's all about the team. You got to build the right team. And that makes most of the, because you're going to iterate on ideas, right? But you're not, your team is, if you have a great team, you can actually iterate and be successful. And so building the right team is probably one of the most important things you have to do. And make sure you get the right mentors, the right advisors as you get going. And don't be afraid to think bold. And because, most of us in larger companies are just making incremental steps and focused on, there's a big, let's call it cost of doing business, right? We just have to keep our current businesses going. And that leaves wide open opportunity for startups to come in with something disruptive that big guys can't be doing all the time. So wide open space.
Well, Rajiv, thanks very much. It was a very enlightening talk. And perhaps you can also give me some useful tips on how to beat you next time I play you in tennis. But absolutely enjoyed sparring with you here on this conversation. Thanks very much.
Likewise, Rajan. Thank you. We'll see you on the tennis court.
Thanks, everyone, for watching the latest episode of the Fabric Spotlight series, and look forward to a brand new one soon.